Here's a question you might not have thought of. Should your elect and catechumens be dismissed from the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday? Hi, my name is Diana McAlintle, and I'm with teaminitiation.com. It's certainly not a question we get very often, but it's something that you want to reflect on so that we can deepen our understanding of what happens at the dismissal of catechumens and also what the role of the baptized, the role of the faithful is during our Triduum celebrations. As you know, catechumens are dismissed when they are present at the Eucharist. They're dismissed not only because they cannot yet share in communion, but because they are preparing to take on the prayers that belong to the faithful, namely the Creed, the Universal Prayer, or also known as the General Intercessions, and the Eucharistic Prayer. And so at every Mass where they are present, they are dismissed before any of those prayers begin. At Holy Thursday, we have the intercessions. The Creed is omitted, but we do pray the general intercessions and then, of course, the Eucharistic prayer leading into communion. And so it seems normal that we would dismiss our catechumens before the intercessions begin. If you take a look in your Roman Missal, it goes on Holy Thursday, the liturgy of the Word. Perhaps you might celebrate the washing of the feet, and then after washing of the feet, the presider leads the intercessions and then goes into the Eucharistic prayer. So should we then be dismissing our catechumens and elect before we begin the intercessions? It seems obvious that we should, but not a lot of people do, because the Triduum is already so packed and so beautiful, and it's sometimes very difficult to get someone who would be able to gather with the catechumens if they were dismissed from the Mass of the Lord's Supper. And so here is something that you might consider that can help you acknowledge your catechumens even if you cannot yet dismiss them from the Mass on Holy Thursday. If you open up your ritual text to paragraph 67 in your Order of Christian Initiation of Adults, it is the dismissal of catechumens, the first time that it takes place in the rite for entrance into the catechumenate. So paragraph 67, there are 4 different sections of that paragraph. Section A and B are the dismissal itself, the 2 different options that you can take for dismissing your catechumens to go and share their spiritual experiences. Now, option C is what I want you to take a look at. Here, option C, it says, if, however, for serious reasons the catechumens do not leave and must remain with the faithful, they are to be instructed that, though they are present at the celebration of the Eucharist, they cannot take part as the baptized do. They may be reminded of this by the deacon or the celebrant in these or similar words. So take a listen to the words that are suggested here. They're really quite beautiful. Although you cannot yet participate fully in the Lord's Eucharist, stay with us as a sign of our hope that all God's children will eat and drink with the Lord and work with His Holy Spirit to recreate the face of the earth. That is a beautiful way to acknowledge your catechumens and especially your elect at the Mass of the Lord's Supper if you're not yet ready to dismiss them before we begin the intercessions at that Eucharist. And that is an option that you can take at any Mass. It doesn't have to be Holy Thursday or the Triduum. It could be at any Sunday Eucharist, any weekday Eucharist when catechumens are present. So now let's just take a step back and think about what are some other options that you can take if you want to help your catechumens get the full experience of being part of the order of catechumens even during the Triduum celebrations. So at Holy Thursday, you could dismiss your catechumens and invite them simply to gather among themselves for 10-15 minutes just to share their reflections on what they experienced at that Eucharist, at the liturgy of the Word, where they hear the gospel reading from John's gospel of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples, and then possibly even having themselves have their feet washed if you are celebrating the washing of the feet. And so that would be a beautiful time for them just to gather with themselves, with their as companions on this journey, without a member of the faithful, especially if you have elect who are being dismissed. Presumably they've been in this process for a while now and can lead themselves in this kind of conversation. And it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be formal, really just sharing their recollections of what they experienced, what they saw, what they heard, what they felt. Now, just a quick note about Good Friday. Good Friday is not a Mass, it is a liturgy of the Word and the distribution of Holy Communion. So we don't often think of dismissing catechumens on Good Friday. However, a very important part of the Good Friday liturgy is the solemn intercessions. These are 10, maybe 11 intercessions that are the most solemn way that we, the Church, praise these prayers, these intercessions for the world, for the Church, for all kinds of needs. And so we really do need to dismiss our catechumens if we are taking on that understanding that the reason they are being dismissed is not simply because they can't share in communion, but because they are not yet members of the order of the faithful. They are members of the order of the catechumen. And so you could again use that option, paragraph 67C, to acknowledge the catechumens before we begin the praying of the intercessions on Good Friday. So that's how we can constantly place our catechumens before us and continue to pray for them throughout the Triduum on Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and most especially on Holy Saturday and the great Easter Vigil. Hopefully that's given you some ideas to think about, some ways to help you in your own catechumenate ministry. Come on over to teaminitiation.com for even more resources. My name is Diana McAlintoll. Thanks so much for watching.